Welcome to Firth East Council. I'll call our meeting to order. Everyone could please bow their head for a moment of reflection. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda. We do have a couple changes. I will let Ashley tell you about them.
Okay, thanks, Mayor Agates. So the following item is added to the agenda, bylaw 205-2024, and that is in regards to a zoning bylaw amendment that was approved in principle earlier this year, and it's just the bylaw coming back to be approved. And then changed on the agenda is that the bylaws are first, second, third, and final reading, not divided into first and second. How it's listed, or how it was listed, 11.1 and 11.2. So 11.2 is removed.
Okay. So we have a motion that the agenda as prepared for the August 12, 2025 meeting of council of the Township of Firth East be approved as amended. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. If you have pecuniary interest, you can disclose that now or as our meeting goes along. Under consent agenda, we have 12 items. Is there any item anyone would like pulled or they have questions on? Hugh? 5.17, you want it pulled? Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, then we have a motion that items 5.1.1 to 5.1.12 is set out on the consent agenda for the August 12, 2025 regular meeting of council be received for information with the exception of 5.1.7, which shall be introduced separately, and the minutes of July 8, 2025 special meeting of council and the July 15, 2025 regular council meeting be adopted. Moved by Andrew, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, Hugh, 5.1.7.
Yeah, considering a lot of the businesses that are in Perth East, a lot of the people, especially in Mornington, work on a cash basis. So I would support sending a letter that supporting, I believe it's South Monaghan, South Monaghan, that they were sending a letter to the federal government expressing their concern about the $10,000 cash limit.
Okay, you're moving that. Jeremy, you have a question?
Yeah. Not that familiar with the legislation. What we're reading here is all correct. This is a question for Ashley about the $10,000 thing, and I'm not familiar with this bill or this legislation, so I don't want to just support something that I.
Yeah, as far as I know, the wording is verbatim, this $10,000 limit. I don't know what the driver of it is outside of the idea of avoiding of laundering and false documentations around. But we do not have a lot of information about it. So if that's the direction of council that they want to follow the board up more information about that, we can do that. But yeah, I think I don't want to step on the direction. So I think it's that conversation where council feels their comfort level is in terms of a letter of support, or if they want more.
Hugh, what do you want to do?
And just on the side of it, I simply thought that it's a hard job to have money and the government said, no, not really. So I don't think it is a change of population. So I'm kind of tired of it. Percent of the population beside that.
Okay, so Hugh's going to move that we support. Do we have a seconder? Andrew? Is there any more questions, comments? Amanda?
It's more of a sort of a comment because I think this is a federal bill. Because I think from the little bit that I know of it, I think a lot of churches and other kind of groups are concerned about it. So I think there's definitely some concern for sure. The thing that I'm struggling with is how it impacts the township. So that's my only thing. I think it impacts charities and like community groups. I don't know how it impacts the township. And so therefore, like, that's why I'm not, without more information, like, I'm struggling with it, but I do know it's a very controversial bill, and there's definitely some community and church groups that are very concerned about it. So I don't understand the relation to the township other than obviously we care about our community groups. So for me, like, I would like to get more info on how it would impact the township, if at all. So I probably won't support it without that additional information, but I do know that it is controversial for sure, and a lot of charities are worried.
Okay, anyone else? Jeremy?
Permit or taxes, someone come in and pay.
Through you, Mayor Agats, there isn't a maximum right now for cash, a cash limit, but if this goes through, we probably have to. We would run into that issue probably with tax sale properties. If they were coming to pay up their taxes, it would be cash or a certified check we would need. There are individuals that do pay cash for their taxes on a regular basis. Some can get up to large amounts, $10,000, not necessarily on a regular basis. And building permits, more than likely they're checks, but there are some that pay cash as well. So it could impact that as well.
Would they be $10,000? Like, how often would that threshold meet? Like, that's what I'm curious about, like, for more information of, like, I think that's a good point. I just, like, how often do we hit that threshold? Because, like, how much is a typical, what's the typical building permit, like, for residential? Like, how much would that be?
Ballpark, 12,000, 10 to 12,000.
Okay, so that would impact this.
Yeah, very seldom do we ever see that in cash, so it's usually always a check. Like, I don't
Right.
think I've ever seen someone come in and come close to this with cash for a building permit.
Okay, anyone else? Andrew?
Thank you, Mary. So an interesting and timely caveat here. The other weekend, a nephew of mine was going to a four-wheeler rally. They broke it, taking it off, wrecked the thing. They all pulled their money together, the group, and went and bought one cash. Bought a side-by-side cash. They had enough money they could get out of their machine. They went and bought one. So I think it might be a bit more widespread, just a practical application for residents of Perth East, especially maybe in Mornington. So I like it. I'd like to know more too, but I have heard about this and it's been going on it's not just something that came out last week. So I'm willing to support it. I think it's good enough for what good it'll do to put our name on something like this for our residents.
Okay, anyone else? We'll call the motion then. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're going to move. You?
When it comes to saying this.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on now. Under presentations, we do have one public presentation tonight, and with us we have Kim McElroy, the Director of Social Services for the City of Stratford, and she's going to talk on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. So welcome, Kim. Good to see you.
Lots of familiar faces here. And I apologize, Chief Skinner gives his regrets. He's unable to attend. So I'm going to play a dual role on this and use his speaking parts as well. So, slide one. So, good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for giving me some time on your agenda today to present to the updated Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan for Perth County Partnership Municipalities and Councils. This is called Charting the Next Chapter, Empowering Safe and Connected Communities. So I am one of the second-term co-chairs of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. Chief Skinner is my co-chair. And I hope you have had some time to review the documents that we provided in advance. But if not, I hope that our overview today provides you with the information you need to adopt this plan for your municipality. In January 2019, new requirements for community safety and well-being planning came into force. Municipalities across Ontario were legislated through the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019 to develop and adopt a plan in partnership with many local service providers and community groups to address complex social issues. The plan acts as a guide for community partners to communicate, collaborate, and coordinate interventions and initiatives aimed at improving safety and well-being for all our residents. The Ministry of Solicitor General created the Community Safety and Wellbeing Framework to help support the development of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. This graphic here demonstrates the 4 levels of intervention in community issues. In this graphic, the red area, identified as incident response, is the most expensive, as this is where our resources, police, fire, ambulance, social services, hospital, ERs, are required to deal with people in potentially crisis situations. The purpose of this plan is to focus primarily on the other 3 levels in order to reduce calls for service, reduce the risk of our communities, leverage best practices, and capitalize on efficiencies. The more initiatives we can implement that are focused on social development, prevention, and risk intervention, the greater the impact we can have on our communities. Some examples of the programs that have had a very positive impact include the Access, Resource, and Connection Program. And this program works with the community to address social and health issues of individuals living in poverty. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership consists of a wide range of municipal staff, CAOs, social service providers, agencies, and organizations across the 6 partner municipalities. In moving the plan forward, it was vital to have representation across all municipalities to ensure that there were diverse perspectives, opinions, and experiences. The engagement with the community safety and well-being through the series of discussions, surveys, and consultations sought to identify priority areas that were common to all the municipalities represented by this plan, and look at the services delivery gaps and the gaps that are needed to be addressed. The complexity of the issues facing individuals, families, and communities takes creative, innovative leaders from different professional disciplines coming together to provide direction and empower the operational teams who are on the street day and night doing the best they can to support the most vulnerable of our society and to prioritize the safety and well-being of all our residents and visitors. So on this slide, we see the critical role played by the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council in uniting with local communities. There was a thorough engagement process aimed at uncovering the community strengths, the existing assets, and protective factors. This collaboration also identified key partnerships, service gaps, and new opportunities for enhancing safety and well-being. The methodology was comprehensive, involving consultations, surveys, and interactive engagement sessions. These efforts were not just procedural, they significantly informed the prioritization and planning of the future initiatives aimed at fostering a safer and more resilient community. As we delve into the insights gained from our engagement, it's clear that there is a critical need to deepen our understanding of priority areas. This understanding will help us develop more streamlined and collaborative strategies. We must clarify decision-making mechanisms within our collaborative framework and pinpoint the strengths, leverage available resources, and make the most of existing assets. Furthermore, recognizing how priority areas intersect allows us to align strategies effectively to tackle these multifaceted challenges. Improving communication strategies is essential for better integration and coordination across all the levels. Finally, the insights highlighted the need to boost coordinated efforts, empower community entities, and provide support where needed. These insights drive us towards the more holistic approach in advancing community safety and well-being. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council has undertaken a comprehensive analysis of the community's most urgent needs, leading to the strategic identification and prioritization of critical areas that demand immediate and collective action. This initiative seeks to tackle prevalent issues through a collaborative approach to foster a safer, more resilient community. For this plan, the priority areas determined by the council encompass housing and homelessness, intimate partner violence and gender-based violence, mental health and addictions. These areas have been chosen due to their profound and pervasive impact on community health and safety. Coordinated strategies are essential to enact effective change, emphasizing partnership and resource sharing among local organizations and investors. By focusing efforts on these pivotal areas, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council aims to promote long-term solutions that enhance quality of life and community resilience. The Council's efforts are a call to action for all community investors to participate in the collaborative development and implementation of targeted initiatives. Through shared commitment and actions, these efforts are intended to create a tangible, positive transformation within our community. So where are we going? The objectives of charting the next chapter, empowering safe and connected communities. Where we're going, we are building leadership consensus building. We foster a shared understanding of priority areas amongst the leaders. We employ a top-down strategy, including enhanced priority-specific training for Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council, and we increase the communication via newsletters and memos. Community collaboration. We partner with community entities to strengthen priority-focused initiatives. Public awareness and training. We conduct in-depth training and public communication campaigns to educate our residents, and a unified policy support. We back collaborative efforts for policy influence and garner backing from local, provincial, and federal governments. To prevent service duplication and optimize resource allocation, each priority area will be assigned a lead individual who is a leader within their priority area. This person will act as a primary conduit for communication between the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council and community tables. They will also be responsible for several key functions, including providing detailed updates bi-monthly at the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council, reporting on the progress within education, community-wide initiatives, and advocacy. They will act as a bridge between community tables and the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council. The liaison will convey recommendations and insights to relevant stakeholders. And the liaison will organize and deliver training sessions to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Partnership Council, aligning with strategic priorities. They will lead subcommittees to help further community-wide initiatives directed at addressing the priority areas. The Partnership remains committed to enhancing community safety and well-being through a structured strategic approach characterized by innovation, collaboration, accountability, and continuous improvement. Our key initiatives will include having structured decision-making, feedback and review mechanisms, specialized subcommittees, training and capacity building, innovation and problem solving, integration of research, and community insights. This holistic strategy aims to make a tangible impact on community well-being by aligning rigorous process management with an adaptive, evidence-driven framework. As we move into the next iteration of the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, charting the next chapter, empowering safe and connected communities, there will be a strong emphasis on building a shared understanding of the priority areas while working collaboratively with Partnership Council and community tables to address gaps, build on community strengths and assets, and promote the safety and well-being of all residents in our community. So a couple of final thoughts before opening up to questions. First of all, I want to congratulate your municipality on the commitment of your staff throughout this process. And I will note that Mike participated in the tables and the discussion, so thank you for coming out. It led to an enhanced discussion of what was going on throughout the county. We recognize that each municipality has its individual needs, and in no way, shape, or form is this plan an attempt to impose its priorities on your community. But this is a zero-sum game. This is about bringing people and committees together and to understand the diverse issues, broaden the impact of the successes already achieved, and leverage the knowledge and commitment of existing committees. And in doing so, provide you, as your elected representatives, with the information you need to satisfy yourselves that there has been return on your investment in this approach, and satisfy our residents that progress is being made to make your community safer and enhance your community members' quality of life. So thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. And if there's any question, I'd be happy to take them.
Great, thank you. Questions from members of council? You?
Thank you for that presentation. Would this necessitate that you would have to hire extra people to coordinate all the things that are happening, or is this just you're using the employees of the municipalities as part of their job is to make this come true?
Thank you, through the mayor. So if we go back to the first iteration of the plan, a 0.5 position was hired. There's but through and continues to be working as they coordinate the plan. In fact, I would say what we've seen from the first iteration of the plan is that we see efficiencies and partnerships working to leverage the service delivery and get a higher return. So we do not, at this point, we have not seen extra staff be hired. When we notice gaps in a community, we may talk about how do we use provincial funding and municipal funding to enhance addressing those gaps through service delivery. But no, there's no FTEs being asked for in this plan.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, thank you very much, Kim. Great report.
Thank you. And I appreciate all your work here and continued success and collaboration.
We appreciate everything that you do as well. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks. Okay, so we do have a motion, and it says that the Council of the Township of Perth East received the public presentation from Kim McElroy, Director of Social Services, City of Stratford, regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan 2025 to 2035 for information. Moved by Bob, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no other presentations, no delegations, no public meetings, and no public hearings. We have nothing from planning, nothing from the CAO. So we're down to the clerk, and the first one is the Carthage Old Colony Mennonite Church. So Ashley, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Agats. So there is a request from the Carthage Cemetery Council. Seen the request a few months ago in support of the creation of the cemetery. And now they've come back and asked if we would be in support of waiving the requirement for $165,000 to be set aside for the care and maintenance fund, and that's required through the Bereavement Authority of Ontario. So they've outlined in their report that they are joined with 3 other cemeteries that are currently active, and they do have almost $90,000 in a care and maintenance fund. So this cemetery would be joined with those 3 other ones. We have reviewed internally, and we think the risk is lower. All 4 cemeteries would need to be abandoned, or we would have to take over ownership of it. So when they are joined together that way, if the Carthage Cemetery was abandoned, then the other 3 would take over the ownership of it. Or if the one in Drayton is abandoned, then the other 3 would take over ownership. So there is 4 cemeteries that would need to become abandoned before the township would see that would take over ownership. I will try to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Questions of the report, Hugh?
No, I noticed in number 3, say it's a small cemetery and it's also be sold. So they just have the plots there for their, like at most cemeteries now, anybody can get buried anywhere. So this is just for them, nobody else can go there and they don't bother selling the plots, they just put money into the
Yes, they primarily will have it available for their members of that church group. They did verbally say if they were approached by someone, they would consider allowing that person to be buried there. So if they couldn't find anywhere else to bury or be buried, or if they weren't part of a different cemetery, if they didn't want to come to, say, one of the township-owned cemeteries, they would consider that, but primarily it is for their residents or their members, sorry.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing no questions, we do have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Carthage Old Colony Mennonite Church, OCMC, requests for support of care and maintenance exemption, CLE-2025-28, prepared by the Manager of Legislative Services / Municipal Clerk, dated August 12, 2025, for information, and that council support the Carthage OCMC's application to the Bereavement Authority of Ontario for a waiver of the $165,000 care and maintenance fund requirements. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Andrew. All in favor? Carries. And the next report we have is CPR land lease extension. Ashley?
Okay, thanks, Mary Gitz. So this is for CPR Drive in Milverton here, and the land just around there that we rent currently from His Majesty the King, which is represented by the Minister of Infrastructure currently. The agreement expires the end of this year, so they have proposed extending the agreement for a further 5 years. Usually we go on 5-year agreements. Are any?
Questions? Jeremy?
CPR Drive is all part of this, and this is a roadway that we would call this a road. And it's maintained like a municipal road, I guess. Is there a way to eventually kind of script that out of there? Because we are maintaining it, we're dealing with it on a regular basis, but it's not in fact our land. Or do we need to do that? It just seems odd that we have a public roadway on that chunk of leased land. I don't know if that's even something we can do, but I think it's worth. Like, what are the ramifications of that, I guess?
We have asked over the years for an easement rather than an agreement. They are, it was not the Minister of Infrastructure at that point in time, it was a different ministry. They were open to conversations about an easement. We have looked at purchasing the land as well, and the quote that I got back was just over 400,000 per acre. And the issue, staff could look into it further, and Jake maybe wants to elaborate, but currently the municipal water that runs into Milverton crosses through CPR. So it's, over the years, it's been best to leave it as an agreement, a lease agreement for the land, to try to not run into any issues that way. Anyone else wants to elaborate more on that?
I don't know.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled CPR Land Leased Extension and Amending Agreement, CLE-2025-26, prepared by the Manager of Legislative Services / Municipal Clerk, dated August 12, 2025, for information, and that council approve and give 3 readings to bylaw 35-2025, being a bylaw to enter into a lease extension and amending agreement with His Majesty the King in right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure, for lands described as Part Lot 423, RP 363, Township of Perth East, County of Perth, Rental Agreement A75408, File ID GNG-80, Lease ID M73670. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Amanda. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Ashley. We'll move to finance. First item is the 2024 year-end analysis. Paula, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Agates. So council will remember at the last meeting, the external auditors, Seebach and Company, was in and presented the audited 2024 financial statements with a surplus of $522,147. So this report is just requesting permission to distribute that surplus to the various reserves as we felt fit based on the actual surplus deficits in the various areas. I gave some reasoning as to why we picked those. The general contingency, 172,000. That's just for general unexpected expenses for the township. The police stabilization, it's suggested to transfer 105,147 to the police stabilization reserve. And this is mainly due to the fact of the relief that we received for the policing costs in 2025. Not sure what's going to happen with 2026 expenses at this point. So hopefully this will help offset some of that. Proposed transfer of 50,000 to the legal fees. And this is, the township is experiencing increased legal fees related to various items. So we're increasing that reserve, hopefully. The winter control stabilization, transfer 50,000 to that, and that will bring that to a targeted balance. This will help with the anticipated future costs for this year for in November, December for winter control, as council will remember with the year-to-date reports that were presented. We're pretty much at budget now for our winter control for 2025. The last item, it's suggested to transfer 145,000 to a municipal drainage reserve. This would be a new reserve, and that would be created to stabilize the municipal drainage costs from year to year, because that can fluctuate drastically. The funding source would be from the annual budget transfers and the surplus deficits within that line item from year to year. And the annual withdrawals and transfers would be determined through the budget and the year-end process, and with a maximum target of the average 3 prior years for the township drainage costs. So that's that report. If council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Questions of the reports? Hugh?
Title search has been taken. We just use general revenues for that. Instead of separate.
Yeah. And that one was marked to go away anyway once it went to a zero balance.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, we do have a motion. Oh, sorry, Amanda.
Sorry, I just have a question. Apologies. It's just about the winter stabilization one. So you mentioned that we're already at cost, and that's from like the Jan, Feb, March. Is that like so we're putting more money towards that? Is that like, I just want to make sure I fully understand that one.
We're not necessarily putting more money towards that in the 2025 budget. We're putting more money into the reserve and anticipating
For
that
more
we could possibly be over budget.
Okay.
Okay, Andrew?
Marigits, just looking at this, so the general contingency, that's just like the main corporate account to pull and drop from. Is there any specific projects we need that for, do you think, or that are earmarked for that money, or is it just nice to have a number? Did we set a number? Are we up near it, or? Sorry, I should have sent that one ahead.
Yes. So,
I was looking for it on here, but we can't.
So the minimum maximum is equal to 5% of the annual general expenditures budgeted, excluding winter control, calcium, those ones that we have separate reserves set up for.
Yeah.
So I didn't have time to go back and calculate the 2024 number, so know exactly what that maximum
Okay.
would be for that one.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, the
But
general
that
one
would be well under.
seems to just be going into the pot, like the general pot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if, was it considered in discussions that we should return that to the taxpayer?
that general contingency reserve is used for unexpected expenses. So fuel costs increased quite a bit 1 year, 2 years. So we use that. There could be unforeseen expenditures. There could be something, I don't know, some building issue happens that we have to do some maintenance on a building to continue with the service. This is what would help cover those, fund those costs.
Sorry, just one more question. So the 172, that's the reserve balance, or is that the amount we want to transfer?
That's what we want to transfer.
Yeah, and the balance is at, sorry,
The balance is at December 31st, 2024 is 632,407.
yeah. I'd suggest we give some of that back as tax relief for the next year. It's not like, we've taken it. Let's give some back, but that's just my slant on it, but.
Mike would like to.
The one other piece through the mayor as it relates to the general contingency, and I'm not disputing station, is a lot of times it's relied on is if the province make changes to the OMPF funding, that's typically where we would look to go, because it's a general contingency, and the OMPF is funding that we give to the province on an annual basis. We're I wouldn't say regularly, but yeah, I would say we're regularly reminded that those funds could change over time, and those who sit at the county table could tell you it has a significant impact on the county budget, and it's been reduced drastically over the last 5 years at the county. So I'm not trying to intercede into the conversation. I just wanted to add that as another item that we tend to look to for the general.
Okay, any other, Bob?
Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with this report, and always nice to have a surplus, but some of these there's probably need some extra work. Drain needs to be created, probably only been forever, but municipal drain issues. So it's good to reserve winter control. We know there's going to be more storms, ice storms. So it's a good practice to reinvest this into what will be needed at some point, unknown, but it's good practice.
Okay, you?
Just one last question. The pot buyback at Greenwood and Southeast Hope Centers, is that people that had bought and decided they didn't want it anymore, and then they sold it back to us?
That's correct.
Okay, any more questions? Seeing none, we do have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the Manager of Financial Services / Treasurer dated August 12, 2025, entitled 2024 Year-End Analysis, FIN-2025-14 for information, and further that a municipal drainage reserve be established and included in Appendix A of the Reserve and Reserve Fund Policy, number FL-1.15.01 as follows. Proposed / intended use to stabilize township municipal drainage costs. Affected asset categories not applicable. Funding sources, annual budgeted transfer to reserves and/or transfers to reserves in the amount of the difference between the annual budget and the actual cost for the years. Annual withdrawals / reserves determined through the annual budget year-end processes, and a minimum / maximum target, the average of the 3 prior year township municipal drainage costs. And further that the 2024 cash surplus be transferred to the following reserves: general contingency, $172,000, police stabilization, $105,147, legal fees, $50,000, winter control stabilization, $50,000, and municipal drainage, $145,000. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Hugh, second by Bob. All in favor? Carried. Okay, our next report is the 2025 Asset Management Plan update. Paula?
Thank you, Mayor Agates. So at the previous council meeting as well, on July 15th, Hanson was here and presented the draft 2025 asset management plan as it was updated. And option one within this report is the suggested contributions that need to be to achieve the funding, to reduce the funding gap for the tax-based assets as well as the rate-based assets. In review of that report, option one, I'm not sure it's reasonable to eliminate the funding gap within 10 years, because that would eliminate it within by 2035. So in the report, there was options 2 and options 3 presented for council's consideration. And one thing that I would say is if council does decide to go with option 1 or 2 or 3, we would have to continue to closely monitor those service levels just to make sure that we're meeting those targets, as the funding is not at the optimal level to achieve those targeted service level, proposed service levels. So we would have to monitor them closely. So if option 2 or 3 is selected by council, there could be changes to it in the future if we see that those service levels are dipping or we're falling below our targets. The assets have remained in fair condition overall. There were a few areas that have increased from fair to, buildings went from fair to good, computer, hardware, software, and then the equipment categories as well went from poor to fair, as well as the furniture, tools, and small equipment. So council has been supportive of the asset management program to date, and that's indicated through their increased contributions to the capital program and to reserves through the budget process. And this, with these improvements to the couple of areas here, categories, and we're maintaining the overall fair condition, we're holding our own. And we just want to make sure that our service levels don't dip below. So I would think if we go with option 2 or 3, I'm hopeful that we can maintain those service levels, but they would be closely monitored. So that's all I had for that report. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Questions, comments, Hugh?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Like when they talked about the roads being in such bad conditions and stuff, so if we had better data with saying that, the roads are in far better conditions, is that going to change the outcome on how much money we need?
Yes, through the mayor. Yes, that would improve our data. If we improve the data, and that's mainly based on our gravel roads, they weren't condition assessed. They're age-based mainly. And that's not really a true accurate reflection is what we're finding on the other categories. So if we have a condition assessment on the gravel and we up our condition assessments on the other categories, we can have more accurate data, and that would probably decrease that funding gap, or it would accurately reflect that funding gap so we could plan better. Because what we're finding is the useful lives that we've set up for some of these assets, we're able to extend past that, and then that allows us to collect that money over a longer period of time.
Okay, other questions? Who wants to move what? Hugh? Okay, do we have a seconder?
So just to clarify, is it option 3 for
Both.
topics?
For both, or for one?
So
Well, they're all part of the same motion, are they not?
they currently are, yes, but we could consider them separately. Council wants to consider them separately.
Okay, well, let's get a seconder and then maybe we'll discuss the wastewater and water rate as well. So do we have a seconder for that motion? The motion is that we use option 3 for both for the increase annual capital contributions. It's on page 128. And also option 3 on page 129 to increase 1.9% for the water and wastewater. Well, maybe we need to go. Just make this all really confusing. Let's do it separately. All right? Okay, let's do it separately because that might, we haven't had the discussion on the water, the wastewater. So let's just go, we're just going down to option 3 on page 128, the increase to reserves at 1% tax, 112,000, correct? Okay, that's as far as we're going. We're not doing the water and wastewater now. We'll have another discussion. So I need a seconder for that part. Jeremy? Any more discussion on that part, Bob?
So part of the budget process, Paula, would this just be, this year we're at 1.99% CPI and we're going to add 1%, bring our assets up to, how it would kind of look like. So following CPI, we're also adding capital surcharge, if you want to call that. So we're not just going to say, well, this year it's going to be, separated out so that we can tell the taxpayer that this is what we're doing.
That's correct. I can break those up.
I'm just worried that we would get to the budget and let's say we've got 10% increase or a 5% increase. People are going to say, well, we can't live with that. But we're already going to have to live with deciding on to treat mandatory 1% every year. I think that would be something to start with. We'll have to increase it at some point. It's hard enough. You have to see the other levels of government stepping up like they used to. Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Yep. Okay, so the motion reads that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the Manager of Financial Services / Treasurer dated August 12, 2025, entitled 2025 Asset Management Plan Update, FIN-2025-15 for information. And further, that Council approve the 2025 Township of Perth East Asset Management Plan as presented by Henson Consulting Limited. And further, that the following option to reduce the property tax supported asset funding gap as presented in the 2025 Asset Management Plan prepared by Henson Consulting Limited be included in the 2026 budget as follows, and that is option 3, increase annual capital contributions to reserves by 1% of tax levy, approximately $112,000 per year, representing 3/4 of the 3-year average annual asset assessment growth, in addition to the annual CPI adjustment, continuously monitoring levels of service to ensure they remain aligned with targeted performance standards at this funding level. That was moved by Hugh and second by Jeremy. Jeremy?
It's more of a general question about the budget for next year. So we're asking for these items to be included as council. You're getting the budget. You're the one making the final approval of the budget. All of these items that we ask for to be in there, will we get a report at the end that says, hey, look, Rhonda didn't include this or Mary Eggs didn't include this in the budget? although council did request it? Or how are we able to decipher that at the end of the day, what we recommended at meetings be included and what wasn't included in the final budget? Because you could decide not to do this, and we, if we're not looking through it, like, is there going to be a report that we'll see that says, here's the final budget, but hey, this is what council wanted in it and what was not included?
Who wants to answer that? Paula?
I'll start with that. So through the mayor, with her approval, I envision this as a section to the budget report that gets presented to council, and then a follow-up, and if there's any changes that are made by the mayor, so that council's aware of any changes that have been made.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I envision it. Anyway.
Okay, Andrew?
The second option 3 paragraph on page 129.
We're not there yet. We're at
Oh,
the
we're just
other one.
doing the first one. Oh,
We're
okay.
just doing the first one.
All right,
We'll do that in a minute. Okay? So now we're working on the first one. Any more questions or comments on it? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're going to the next part, and the next part is on the water, wastewater rate support. So Andrew, do you want to comment now on option 3?
Yeah, thank you, Marigat. So option 3 and like option, the and says water, wastewater systems. But as option 3, the rates for water, wastewater, is that what's being proposed?
Through you, Mayor. Options 1, 2, and 3 are for the rates,
Okay.
and the and is for a future water sewers rate study.
Now, we're already collecting at full replacement value, correct?
Based on historical costs.
Yeah, so
And-
they've gone up in the last
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll go down again. A stick
Maybe.
of lumber used to be $10 a 2x4, now it's back down to 2, right? We can only hope.
We can hope. There's always hope.
So I'm just wondering now, what's the jeopardy of do nothing in this case for that increase? Because it's, how long was the projection? Was it, it probably says in here, was it 3 or 4 year projection? Because a lot's changed in the last while. I'm just thinking that, maybe some pause to see how it goes and of course monitor.
These
Right.
are, yeah, not to cut you off, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
These are 10-year projections in the asset management plan based on existing costs for 2024 dollars.
Okay.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, other questions, comments on the water, wastewater rate? Andrew?
I'll make a comment, sorry. We have increased, Milverton's grown quite a bit. I think Shakespeare's added 100 or so houses. I always thought the mantra was, and I know the economy's kind of out of control, the more users, the less cost. Don't know why we're not seeing that. I know it's not accurate because you just have to look at all the municipalities around us and their taxes are through the roof. So is there anything we can do during the process to make sure that any more development we do works out to that ideal, which it sounds, I've heard it multiple times from different people at different levels, that the more users, the less cost, right? So I'm not sure why we're worrying about more other than the glitch in the economy the last few years, but you know what I mean? I don't know if that's naive of me to think that that's a possibility, but
Yes, good question, comment. So yes, economies of scale are correct. The more users you have, the less it's going to cost to maintain the system. Our systems are very small, so it's hard to see a big notice in that economies of scale as there's additional, we would have to have a lot of additional users. But that's a good step. The more users, the less it's going to cost. However, costs have increased, and to have more users, we need more infrastructure to bring those users on. So there's costs there to increase the size of the systems, right?
Thank you.
Okay, also, in the motion, and that's whoever moves it, if they wish this, it's also to complete a water and wastewater study to determine if the appropriate rates are used. So that can play into part of this conversation, depending what the outcome is of what someone wishes to move. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, are we not doing a water wastewater study, and is that parameter included?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, that's not part of the master plan.
Specifically a water wastewater rate study. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, any other questions, comments? If not, who wants to move what? You move option 3, and what about the study? And the study as well? Okay, we have a seconder. Amanda? Okay, so then the motion would read then, and further that the following option to reduce the water and wastewater rate supported asset funding gap as presented in the 2025 asset management plan prepared by Hempson Consulting Limited be included in the 2026 budget as follows. And that is option 3, increase annual capital contributions to reserves by 1.9% of utility rate revenue, approximately $31,000 per year, representing 1/4 of the 3-year average annual assessment growth, in addition to an annual CPI adjustment, continuously monitors levels of service to ensure they remain aligned with targeted performance standards at this funding level, and complete a water/wastewater rate study to determine the appropriate rates that support full cost recovery for the township's water and wastewater systems. The study should be also identify opportunities to increase contributions to reserves in order to reduce the infrastructure funding gap and improve overall asset conditions. We need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Hugh, sorry. Second by Amanda. I'm losing it. Okay, sorry. Questions, Bob?
So can anyone tell me what $31,000 increase looks like to the average or sewer repair? Is that dollars, or what does that look like to me if I was in Somerville?
I didn't do a calculation on that, but based on just in my head quickly, I would say a 1-2% increase is going to be approximately $3-4 a month, I'm assuming. Just ballpark figure.
Okay, any other questions, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm probably not going to go for the water study. I think we've done it on rates and everything for a number of years, and that seems to work out well. As far as, what it's going to look like to rebuild stuff, I don't think we know that. I'm just wondering if it's just time could be spent better somewhere else. So I won't be supporting this because of that, the wastewater rate study portion.
Okay, anyone else? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, and Paula's next report is the Consumer Index and 2026 job rate salary grid. Paula?
So my last report for tonight is the annual consumer price index for 2026 budget. So the July to June average is 1.99%. The report includes a chart for the history of what the increases have ran over the last few years. And the impact of a 1.99% increase for CPI would be approximately $127,500, which would equate to a 1.14% levy increase based on 2025 levy. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Questions of the report? Amanda?
Just more of the page 216 when we get into the salary grid staff for per diems. So just more of a flag, just more of a comment really. When you look at like some other neighboring areas like Huron County, their full day rate is like $320. So there's a like I'm just more so flagging in terms of like the full day and half day per diems. I couldn't find quickly some of the other neighboring areas, but I just didn't know if we are on the lower side with respect to that. Just more of a comment. So just wanted to flag that I was able to find, and that was based off of their 2018 bylaw.
Okay, maybe that's something we can deal with separately after we deal with this. Okay, any more questions on what Paula's presented? Okay, so then the first motion we have is the Council of the Township of Perth East received a report entitled Consumer Price Index and 2026 Job Rates / Salary Grid dated August 12, 2025, prepared by the Manager of Financial Services / Treasurer for information. That consumer index CPI rate of 1.99% as averaged from July 2024 to June 2025 be used as base budget benchmark as outlined under Perth East Budget and Control Policy FL-1.06, and that the 2026 adjustment to the Township of Perth East pay grid be 1.99% effective January 1, 2026. All full-time and part-time salary and hourly wages, including seasonal and casual, council annual and meeting rates, volunteer firefighter on-call hourly rate, training rate, practice rate, officer pay, and mutual aid meeting rate. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Amanda, second by Bob. Any more questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Going back to Amanda's comment, Mike and I have had this conversation before that if we're going to do something for the next council, this council should be doing it. So I'm just wondering, Amanda, do you want to bring a motion forward that we have staff look into?
Yeah, I think so this is sort of my thoughts. Like we've had another difficult conversation before that we've kind of skirted around, and like we do need to make decisions on perhaps looking, and I'm not saying we need to increase it. I'm saying we should maybe look at some of the neighboring areas in terms of not necessarily the annual per diem amount, the more so the like full day or half day, like if you were to do a conference or things like that. Like I, for example, tend to shy away from engaging in that because to take a day off work, like I can't justify it because it's not enough. But that's just me. I'm like younger, and so I'm in a different maybe financial position than other people. So it's just like, whether I feel like I, miss out in terms of representing like the township at events or at being able to add value. The other thing that really should be discussed is whether we are going next term to like daytime council meetings or evening, if we're keeping that. It seems to be a reoccurring thing that's been brought up at least 3 times this term. And I think a decision needs to be made well in advance of people deciding whether they're seeking re-election or not next year, because it's next fall is the election. So I think those are the 2 things that really should be kind of addressed from a housekeeping perspective. And those should be they're kind of 2 separate things, but they should be kind of addressed probably sooner rather than later.
So do you want to make a motion that staff bring a report back and compare us to other municipalities in regards to our per diems, say, or all of the council staff, and then bring suggestions forward as well, or something that council can start the conversation about, what you just talked
Yeah,
about.
I think,
the,
and I think they're two separate things, but I think they probably should happen, because I think,
would you
you
want
know,
two separate motions on?
I think they should be two separate, like, personally, I think they should be two separate motions, because they're two very different things, but they impact sort of decision-making for people, in the next term, because, right, like, filings would begin next summer, right? Like, basically a year from now. So if we're planning ahead, we should probably have the discussions, but they should be two separate items.
Did you want to say something?
Just the schedule for next year is, it does have to be approved by council each year, so it's targeted for one of the September council meetings to be brought forward.
So
and then
that's
other
already going to be
conversations,
addressed.
yeah,
Okay.
Yes, and then for the salary, I'm talking about first.
Well, at this point, the schedule would come forward in the same format that it has before. If we're being asked to look at alternatives, then yeah, this would be a great time to.
I just,
put that on the floor.
I just think, how should I say this? Like I said, it's been brought up 2 or 3 times this term about daytime and evening meetings, etc. Like, obviously the status quo, to your point, Mike, the schedule would come back and it would be evening meetings, and that was what would be. But I just think, like, we've had the discussion and we've never, like, I just think it needs to be kind of, I don't want to say put to bed, but it's just like that uncertainty should be like out in the forefront for both people who are on council, who may be considering running for council, and also staff. Like, it should be something that's actually addressed, instead of us bringing it up every so once in a while about why perhaps we have people leaving, like on a staff, like if people are leaving or whatever, or staff retention issues. Like, I think it should be addressed. Like, it's been brought up numerous times saying, oh, we need to make this decision before the next term. And well, we're basically a year away in terms of filings for elections. So that's just, that probably, if that's naturally coming up in terms of scheduling, then maybe that discussion should just be packaged in with that. But that's just a suggestion, whether I'm opening a can of worms, that's something we don't want to be talking about. Obviously, I've been vocal of what my personal thoughts are on it, but I just think that there should be, like, it should be put to bed. That's just my thoughts.
Jeremy?
From an HR perspective, like, if we're suddenly not asking staff to come to a evening meeting once a month, for example, do they have to be given notice of a change in their job? Like, do they have to be given a year's notice or whatever that is if we're asking them, even though it might be to their benefit in this case? Like, do we have to give them a certain amount of notice if we change that type of meeting schedule when we're requiring them to be here in the evening and giving time off in lieu? Like, it's changing how we're paying all of our staff too, or what the expectations of our senior staff is, right? So does it have to be done a year in advance to give them that notice? I don't know what the rules are on that.
Go ahead.
To Mayor Eggets, to Councillor Matheson. It actually depends on how long an employee's been employed with the municipality. So it varies per person, but generally they try and look at the longest notice period when providing notice to a change in employment, like from the longest serving employee. So a year would be a good general amount of time, but we'd look at everyone's service with the municipality as well. Through Mayor Eggets to Councillor Matheson, it would depend if it affects the employment relationship or not. If there's a change from the amount of vacation or lieu time provided, then potentially yes, but that would depend on if that change occurs or not.
Well, let's make two motions here. We'll deal separately. Let's go back to the, we'll come back to this one, but the first one you mentioned about the per diems. So do you want staff to do an analysis with our neighboring communities to see what they do for full day, half day?
Just like just a comparator on the per diem piece, not the annual per diems, but just the,
What they're paid per day?
yeah.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that, Hugh? And any more comments or questions on that before we, in that part, we're only talking about the per diems right now. They're gonna have staff go away and compare it to other local municipalities to see what their per diems are. Okay? All in favor of that? Carried? Okay, now the second half is the meeting schedule and anything else that we're going to change for next year's council. From a staff perspective, that's coming back in September. Is there time to add to that report? Bring ideas back, or do we have, I know we're bringing in a meeting schedule for next year, or do we make a separate motion and say have that come back November? That gives you a little bit more time to come up with some other ideas. So,
Yes, so what I've heard, and yeah, council can correct me if I'm wrong, is that they'd be looking for same type of analysis as we're talking about the meeting per diems, more of how many meetings are happening at neighboring councils and whether or not there is a mixture of daytime, nighttime, just so that there is a comparison. Is that relevant to the decision making, knowing what how others are handling it, or have we reached a point where we just want to see scheduling options and go from there?
From my perspective, there's really three options, right? Option one, status quo. Option two, you move to all daytime meetings. Option three, you move to hybrid, where they alternate from an evening and a daytime. Like I don't think that, from my perspective, doing the analysis of who's doing what needs to be. I think truly those are three options. I don't think that there's any other options available in terms of that. I know that we already do a pretty good job in terms of accommodating. Like there's on occasion, it's certainly just on the off chance, like people have joined meetings virtually. We always try to be as accommodating as possible with various factors. So I don't think that's an issue. I think it's just, those are the three options and they should be discussed as such. Like I don't think staff need to put in the time to put a formal report on that. Council needs to decide what we're doing on that, because that impacts the actual schedule. So if you're bringing the schedule back of like, here's the proposal, it would be like 3 different schedules, basically.
but no, because the schedule they're going to bring is for next year, and it wouldn't change until the new council term. So what they're bringing is what's going to happen in 2026.
Right.
But what
only for a portion of 2026, right?
Well, right till
October.
I guess.
Sorry,
yeah.
September, because the writ drops October.
When is the election? October? Last year it was November, I think. I think inaugural was, it was moved up. So it would be that 1 month, 2 months, maybe.
Right, but Bob just brought up a good point, because the term, you follow that term till that end of the year, and then it's a new. But I think so I guess the schedule that that Ashley would be bringing forward is related to 2026, and that would be the evening meetings, right? Like that would be like status quo,
The way
but
it
it's
is now.
more so for 2027 and onward,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That would be what we'd be sort of deciding upon. So they're two separate things,
Yes.
but related.
So you could have the discussion at that meeting when that report comes forward, or we could have staff bring it back in October or November of this year. And
Yeah, so I guess
have a separate
technically, if we did have a discussion later in October or November, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't impact things really.
no.
Okay.
Except we have staff that are impacted by this.
But would they be impacted though if it doesn't come into effect until 2027? Right? So whatever, if they're like hypothetically, if there was a change, it would come into effect in 2027. So what's being brought forward in 2026 will remain, like it would be the evening meetings.
Yeah, but
Some are changing.
yeah, but I think the question becomes the 1 year notice period. So if it's effective let's just simplify or try to simplify. If it's effective January 1, 2027, December of 2026
Would be the notice
we would need
period.
to have notice. And I would, and this is just my own personal experience around this. People that are looking to campaign and to potentially run would like to know what that schedule is before
Yeah,
they start
well in
campaigning,
advance. Yeah.
before they make that level. So as it relates to timelines, I think council should have the
But we're not
decision.
going to be campaigning November of this year,
No,
are we?
but you're
Like,
gonna- but-
I mean,
No, but you're gonna be campaigning before August of next year.
yeah. Oh,
Right.
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't think that we would. No, because you would have to file the paperwork this month, right? Like it'd be a year from now is when you'd be filing. Like, because we're talking about this year of when we would have the discussion about that, right?
But I think Councilor Jeremy's point is
Is
around
the staff
the
notice.
notice period for.
Yeah. No,
for staff
I get it.
And-
Anyways, I
yeah,
don't look. I think it makes sense for it to be brought up at the same meeting, but it doesn't matter to me a whole lot of whenever. Maybe it's a really heavy agenda. I don't know because we only have one meeting this month, so I don't know whether the September agenda looks like it's not something that should be probably discussed when we have a very heavy schedule. Is what I would say.
Anyone else want to weigh in this before we figure out if we're making a motion? You want a motion or you want direction?
I mean, I'm making a motion, so there's a
Okay.
motion on the floor, and I don't know if there's a seconder or not.
So what is the motion? That staff bring a report back on those three options that you gave
No,
for future council meetings?
I don't think staff need to bring a report. I think the direction is that there would be an item added to a near future council meeting to discuss the format of future council meetings, like for the next term. I don't think we need a report. Like there's only three options. Like I don't think staff need to do a report.
So how's it going to come back if it doesn't go back in a report?
It would be a discussion. It would come back. as a
Correct, but there still
discussion.
has to be a report come back to make the discussion happen.
Does there?
Yes. I would think that a report has to come back to make the discussion, or else where are you going to put it on the agenda?
Okay, that's a fair point, I guess, in terms of formality. All I was getting at is I don't want it to be a huge undertaking for staff to put together this onerous thing. It didn't take me long to find Huron County's bylaw related to it. There's obviously, you could look at Wellington, you could look at Bruce or Middlesex or whatever, like kind of more so surrounding municipalities in those neighboring counties, I guess, if we want to make it proper, then if there's interest in sort of seeing that, then now's the time to do it.
So you captured all this. Sorry.
So to be clear now, then it will be a follow-up report that will have some, that council can further discuss. And do you want to see 3 options in the format of what we currently bring it in, Schedule A? It's usually scheduled into a document, but it outlines the meetings for the year with the times to visualize what 3 options may look like.
Yeah, I think that could be helpful for sure.
Like following along with our other policies that outline when meetings have to fall. Like if currently practice is after a long weekend, the meeting moves to a Wednesday. So what that looks like. Make it easier, might make it more complicated when discussions are. I have that as well.
Okay, so Amanda's moving it. Do we have a seconder? Jeremy? Any more comments? Follow-up report. Okay, so we're moving that. There's going to be a follow-up report come back. Yeah, regarding future council meetings for the next term of council. Okay. Everybody good with that? All in favor? Carried. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks, Paula, for your reports. Now we're going to move to Public Works, and the first one is the Milverton Drinking Water System. Jake?
Thanks, Mayor Higgins. The first report in front of council tonight is related to the replacement of well 4 here in Milverton. As all are aware, at the July 15th meeting, there was a budget amendment made for the replacement of the existing well 4 at the existing reservoir site. Following that meeting, I met with BM Ross as well as the hydrogeologist just to try to figure out next steps in terms of this process. It's been determined that actually physically constructing the well is more or less the first step in the process. And at that time, there would be pump testing go on to determine potential flows and stuff like that, at which point we can make our amendments to our licenses and permits. So the purpose of this report tonight is to request council grant permission to allow for the sole sourcing of a well contractor for this particular project. In our procurement policy, under certain conditions, there could be an exemption for requirement to tender. Section 8.1 of our procurement policy, in this case, would apply, I think anyways, would be the required goods and services are supplied by a particular vendor or supplier having special knowledge, skills, expertise, or experience. So staff are seeking to retain the services of WD Hopper and Sons Limited for the construction of this new well and the decommissioning of well 4. And in terms of meeting that criteria in the procurement policy, there's a couple of items I wanted to touch on. One being that Hopper installed well 6 several years ago, which is adjacent to the proposed location for this well, giving them some insight firsthand on the geology in the area. Another one, Hopper actually completed the rehabilitation of well 4, leading to the well being deemed as compromised. And they were the ones who reviewed the downhole video footage and prepared a report there for that process. And in this particular case, the actual decommissioning of well 4 is more complex than a standard well. There was not an annular seal put in at the time of construction for this well. So there's some additional things such as perforation and pressure grouting that are going to be required to properly decommission this well. And lastly, Hopper worked with the township and the township's retained hydrogeologist to assist in the report prepared by Wilson Associates in response to the ministry. So Hopper has a very good understanding of the situation, and I believe will result in a savings of staff time as well as the contractor due diligence that will be required in advance of this project. So that said, seeking sole source for this project, the estimated cost from Hopper's is $160,000 for the new well and $35,000 for the decommissioning, which was used to produce the estimate of the original request. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Questions, Andrew?
Okay, Mayor, good. Sorry, I didn't have a chance to go back to the other report. So this is a like for like construction, there's no upgrades?
We're gonna be able to, through you, Mayor, determine that once we actually drill the well. Unfortunately, you can't really determine the yield of a well until you physically drill it. But more or less, it is going to be the same. We're hoping we're going to be able to get additional capacity to at least match that of well 6, so we have a true redundancy, so to speak. But yeah, we're not really seeking a significant increase there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the Manager of Public Works dated August 12, 2025, entitled Milverton Drinking Water System Procurement of Well Contractor PUB-2025-23 for information, and further that Council authorize the Manager of Public Works to procure the services of a well contractor to construct a well and decommission an existing well through single source and or direct negotiation in accordance with bylaw 60-216, being the Perth East procurement policy. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Amanda, second by Bob. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and the next report is the development agreement with Ron and Brenda Hyde. Jake?
Thanks again, Marriott. So this one, as you have said, is a request to enter into a development agreement required by the consent applications B4024 and B41-24. This agreement will act to fulfill the township conditions for consent for both applications simultaneously, given that both are effectively identical. In this case, the developer must enter into an agreement capturing provisions for the connection to municipal water and sanitary as well as storm, additionally providing financial securities for the works to be completed on William Shakespeare Street, all in an effort to protect the township. In this case, council has previously authorized the signing of a water main extension agreement, which was brought to a previous council meeting, but this agreement is separate. And at this point in time, the developer's consultant is making some final adjustments to the design based on our engineer's review. And those have not been completed as of tonight's presentation, but they're anticipated to be minor in nature. Along with that, the cost estimates may require some minor adjustments based on the design changes, but we're anticipating those to happen here in the near term. The cost of the work identified in this agreement will be the responsibility of the developer, in this case being the Hydes, with the exception of some stubbing and valving for the water main at the intersection of Burns Street for future water main extensions. which is estimated to be at $5,000, as recommended by the township engineer. And it should be noted, you'll see it moments from now, but just there's reference in these reports to the other development agreement that's going to be coming, as both are kind of a combined works, as the designer and contractor is going to be the same for this, as well as the report 3 tonight. So if there are any questions on this, I will try and answer those.
Okay, thanks, Jake. Questions of the report? Seeing no questions, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Development Agreement, Ronald and Brenda Hyde, PUB-2025-24, dated August 12, 2025, prepared by the Manager of Public Works for information, and further that council proceed with the adoption of bylaw 36-2025, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign a development agreement with Ronald and Brenda Hyde. Moved by Bob, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and the next development agreement with 2497505 Ontario Inc. Jake?
Thanks again. This one should be brief, very similar to the previous report. This one covers the consent application B52-23, basically fulfilling that same condition. This one ultimately requires a water main extension as well, which you'll see in the agreement. And the cost of the works for this particular agreement are entirely the responsibility of the developer. There's nothing coming to the township on this one. And yeah, just a quick comment. I just thought it was kind of important to bring these both at the same time, given kind of the interconnectedness of the works themselves. But yeah, if there's any questions on this one, I will try to answer those as well.
Okay, any questions of the report? Seeing none, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report entitled Development Agreement 2497505 Ontario Inc. PUB-2025-25, dated August 12, 2025, prepared by the Manager of Public Works for information, and further that council proceed with the adoption of bylaw 37-2025, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to sign a development agreement with 2497505 Ontario Inc. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jake. Andrew?
Mary, it's Schedule B on each one. There's something highlighted in yellow. It says concession for Mornington. I'm not sure on both of those reports.
Through you, Mayor, that is an error that I
okay.
saw prior to.
Did you highlight it?
Well, it was highlighted because it needed to change, yes, and I did highlight it. It just should have been updated prior. But there's a couple of things that you'll see highlighted that are going to be finalized prior to officially signing.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to building bylaw enforcement, and we have a quarterly development report. Wes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Agates. For council is the quarterly development report. And there are some notable development pictures there, along with the remaining lot statistics. Happy to answer any questions council may have.
Okay, questions of the report? No questions? I'll just make a comment. It's great to see that we have such interest in Perth East and in the growth that we're entailing here, you know, with either housing or development or businesses. It's great to see. So thanks, Wes. Okay, we have a motion that Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the Manager of Building and Planning / Chief Building Official dated August 12, 2025, entitled Quarterly Development Report March to July 2025, CBO 2025-07 for information. Moved by Andrew, second by Hugh. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have no reports for Parks and Recreation, no report for Fire. We have no correspondence. We have the mayor's meeting log where I was for the month of July, I guess. Remember what month I'm in. Any questions on that? Do we have any council reports? Any meetings that anyone's attended where they've been? No? Okay. So that we have a motion that the mayor's meeting log dated July 2025 and the reports be received for information. Moved by Hugh, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're down to bylaws. And we have bylaw 35-2025, a bylaw to enter into lease agreement with CPR Drive. Bylaw 36-2025, a bylaw to enter into a development agreement, that was Hyde. A bylaw 37-2025, a bylaw to enter into a development agreement, and that was 2497505 Ontario Inc. Bylaw 113-205, a bylaw to collect municipal drain consolidated assessment. Bylaw 114-2025, a bylaw to collect municipal drain consolidated assessment. Bylaw 115-2025, a bylaw to collect municipal drain consolidated assessment. And bylaw 205-2024, a bylaw to amend bylaw 30-1999, and that had to deal with the Ron Hyde application, and that the bylaws listed above be read a first, second, third, and final time. Question, okay?
Comment that, like, some of these are off. Well, or something like that. I know you don't want to do them, but the next year, something else, especially for some rooms and stuff like that. Like that. Just
Yes, so we are in agreement with that. So we have changed what we are doing in-house now. Because we used to hold on to the invoices, so they reached over $500 or $5,000, sorry, then we would invoice out, which is why you see some of those smaller ones that we're trying to clean those up.
And we need a mover and a seconder for those bylaws. Moved by Hugh, second by Bob. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're down to notice of motions. Any notice of motions? Other business, we do have one item of other business. It's been brought to our attention that there's a water system in Shakespeare that has more than 5 users on it, and it was discovered when a new landowner was digging across his property and discovered a pipe. And I'll maybe let Jake tell you a bit more about it.
Sure, through you, Mayor. Without getting into specifics per se on the exact addresses of these properties, there was a sanitary connection made underneath a building, and a private well line was hit during that construction, and it is under the building, so it is not repairable. What we found through talking with some of these property owners, there were 6 additional properties using this one well, plus the property itself that the well is situated on. It's my understanding that Ontario Regulation 319 stipulates that any more than 5 users on a well, including the property the well is on, would actually be classified as a small drinking water system. So we're trying to explore some avenues with these property owners in terms of solutions. One thing we have done is basically put together a cost estimate, which would include a water main extension. We're planning to host a meeting with these affected property owners next week to get a sense of their thoughts on the costs, and we can proceed from there and perhaps bring a report back to council once we gauge their feedback. So I think at this point, their options essentially are to drill a well, or we extend the municipal water main. Now, the sharing of these wells to this level is obviously not permitted. I know there's been a lot of changes, and this is a very old system. But we're going to try to work with these property owners and see what's best for everybody. So stay tuned on this one.
So I guess to add to that, part of the reason it's here tonight is I think council needs to weigh in on what they would like to see. We've already said that anyone who's building new in Shakespeare needed to hook up to the water system. If it was sanitary and their well or their septic system quit, it's an automatic, they hook up to the septic system. They don't have a choice to put their own septic system in. They have to automatically hook up to the townships. So I don't know if you want to make that decision tonight. You want to wait for the cost to come back, but I think it's something that council really needs to look into. Do we want people punching 6 more wells into Shakespeare? To me, that wasn't the idea of putting a water system in there. And if you let these people do that, are we setting a precedent for everybody else that wants to start punching wells as well? And how many more systems are out there like this one? These were supposed to be caught way back when, and I was on council when it didn't. I think maybe a couple of other years were as well. Those systems were supposed to come forward. This one didn't. So I'm sure there might be a few more out there too that we don't know about. And so they in future could cause us a lot more headaches and problems. So we want council to be aware. I'm not sure if you want to do something tonight. If we do something, it has to be in the form of a bylaw, or if you want to wait till Jake, they have their meeting on Tuesday night and then bring it back. Amanda?
Just sort of 2 comments / questions. Would it not make more sense for us to have a special meeting of council following the meeting of the residents, and also given pretty serious, you probably would want to wait till the next council meeting, I'm guessing. I don't know. It's a question, comment. The other question and comment, and apologies for my ignorance, but could a third option also be a communal water system for those 6 houses? I'm just asking more so, I think logically hooking up to our existing system would make more sense. The only reason I'm asking about that is more purely from a cost perspective. And I know communal water systems is it's an interesting technology. I know that there are some challenges with that in terms of lifespan and all that kind of stuff, but just comment / question. I don't know if people can answer that.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Communal wells are allowed in certain scenarios, but from what I gather, you can have 4 additional users from an individual well. But the one detail of this particular issue is that these well lines cross under county roads and township roads, which in my opinion creates some liability for the township, which I think we should try to avoid. There is a third potential scenario where property owners that do sit adjacent to one another, that share side yards, rear yards, there is that potential scenario as well where some of these individuals could perhaps share. But the problem with that is, from my perspective, it creates a bit of an issue for the other users. A water main extension would basically service all of these properties, and that cost would be divvied evenly amongst those property owners. So that's kind of my perspective on this one, but there are definitely options. But I don't think the current arrangement is one of them. So.
Okay, other questions, comments, Andrew?
Yeah, I respectfully am going to lead with this wasn't on the agenda in other business. I realize so it is out of order, this discussion.
I disagree with your comment. It is not. New business can be brought up, and I brought it up under other business. That's where it
In the
is.
interest of a Township Perth East accountability and transparency policy, member of council would like to present an item of business in section, recommend they contact the clerk in advance so it can be placed on a published agenda.
And this didn't come up until after the agenda was out.
Yeah, regardless, I feel it's out of order. So there are some details with the, speaking with the people, my neighbors, there is some back and forth, and this is an old system for sure. I think it predates the well owner who is been there a long time. So yeah, who knows, they're running stuff willy-nilly, but there was a consideration, and I believe it was discussed, and you'll have to ask them about the fact that some were residences and some were businesses, which was kind of a soft spot that allowed that to happen. So as far as so many users on a well, or yeah, on one community well. So in Shakespeare, people may not know, but there's wells being punched all the time, right? To dispute a well, neighbors punch a well. There's probably been 5 or 6 in the last year, at least 5 or 6. So to put forward an edict when and if we discuss it, and definitely not tonight, not being on the agenda, that might be better served for part of the wastewater master plan discussion in the public, and we can have some transparency and have some public discussion over it. Fix this, but a blanket, everybody's going on town water, that's not something that I'd want to be on the receiving end of. So I think wastewater study would be the appropriate public venue for a discussion like that. That's all I'm going to say.
Jake?
Through you, Mayor, just adding some context is I think there is an alternative solution, and I don't think that's what's necessarily being discussed here today. There is another avenue where you can do a particular area of a settlement, which would be applicable to just these users. And I believe that's coined a local improvement bylaw. That is another option. We don't need to apply this town-wide or village-wide, so to speak, but just thought I would throw that out there.
Bob?
I don't know a lot about this situation, but I am surprised when I heard that the health unit hasn't dug their claws into this. Because if they looked at this, they would have made an order long ago. I remember a case in Brunner where they found it was something that happened. Well, this has been happening for over a month, but surprised that they hadn't heard about it from some official agency.
Wes?
I just wanted to add section 7124, separate services from the OBC, just in consideration of the servicing. I think it might be pertinent to the discussion. So I just wanted to mention that. That's just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? You?
Yeah, I think just let Jake have a talk with the people and let them decide what they want to do.
To a point, we put a water system, or we're putting a water system in there with the idea that it's going to serve the community. Not everybody's going to just keep drilling wells and drilling wells and drilling wells. We decided we weren't going to touch the people that are already there. To me, this system was there way back when we were trying to tell the people they couldn't have 5 or more on their system. It never came forward. But we can wait to see what's going to happen, but I still think council is going to have a say on what's going to happen moving forward. Okay. Then we'll go to announcements. Closed session, we do have a need for closed session. We have a motion that the regular meeting of council of the Township of Perth East be temporarily adjourned at 8:50 p.m. to permit the holding of a meeting in closed session for the purpose of personal matters personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. We have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Amanda, second by Jeremy. All in favor? Carried. Okay. We do have a motion that council of the Township of Perth East rise from closed session and reconvene to regular council at 9:04 PM. Moved by Hugh, second by Andrew, all in favor? Carried. We have a motion that a closed meeting was held and only the closed session items identified were discussed in closed session, and further that council approve the confidential direction given to staff. Moved by Amanda, second by Hugh, all in favor? Carried. We have a motion that the minutes of the July 15, 2025 approve the closed session minutes. Moved by Andrew, second by Hugh, all in favor? Carried. And we have a motion that the Council of the Township of Perth East receive the report prepared by the Manager of Legislative Services / Municipal Clerk dated August 12, 2025, entitled 2022 to 2026 Perth East Twinning Interest Group, PETIG, Committee Member Appointment for Information, and further that Council appoint Andrea DeGroot as a citizen representative for the remainder of the 2022 to 2026 term, and further that bylaw 55-2024 be amended to reflect the appointment. Moved by Hugh, second by Jeremy, all in favor? Carried. And the last motion of the night, second last, is that bylaw 38-2025 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Township of Perth East at its regular meeting held on August 12, 2025, be read a first, second, and third time. Moved by Hughes, second by Amanda, all in favor? Carried. And the last motion of the night is the meeting be adjourned at 9:06 PM. Moved by Bob, second by Amanda, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, everyone. Good night and enjoy the rest of your evening.